Death at the movies. A gunman opens fire in a Louisiana theater, killing 2 and wounding 9. Back to his roots. Under tight security, President Obama visits Kenya, the birthplace of his father. Threshold of heaven. In the midst of legal battles, the Little Sisters walk with the elderly poor through their final days. And 3 months later, the focus shifts from relief to long-term recovery for Nepal's earthquake victims. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, July 24th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Court records show the man who opened fire in a Louisiana movie theater had a history of mental health issues. Witnesses say he sat alone and said nothing before last night's deadly shooting spree in Lafayette. Tragedy strikes in a Louisiana movie theater.
Coming to a movie on a Thursday night, we'd never expected that we would see a crime scene.
2 women, ages 21 and 33, were killed when 59-year-old John Russell Hauser opened fire. 9 other people were injured. Police describe Hauser as a drifter. They believe he had only been in Lafayette since July. They say it appears he planned to escape after the shooting.
The quick law enforcement response forced him back into the theater, at which time he shot himself.
Officials found wigs and other disguises at Hauser's hotel room.
Here we are in Lafayette, Louisiana, in the middle of a neighborhood of a movie theater. Why did he come here? Why did he do that? We don't know that.
Witnesses described the horrific scene and the chaos that ensued. Someone quickly triggered an alarm and the entire theater was evacuated.
He was standing up, pointing straight down, and you could see like the light from the end of his gun, almost like a flash.
Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal says the community will mourn the victims and will get through this together.
Let's give these families all the love and thoughts and prayers we can. That's what we need right now the most.
About the tragedy, Bishop Michael Gerald of the Diocese of Lafayette says, in part, "We pray that everyone affected by this horror may feel the comforting presence of our Lord Jesus surrounding them during this difficult time. Along with all people of faith, we commit ourselves to promoting a society that respects the dignity of every human life." Some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. President Obama returns to Kenya, homeland of his father. While there, he'll call for stronger ties between the U.S. and African nations to fight terrorism. Wyatt Goolsby reports from the White House tonight.
Brian, a massive security operation is underway tonight to protect President Obama during his trip to Kenya. There's no doubt security will be a big topic of discussion during this trip, but there's another item on Obama's agenda that's causing controversy.
Security preparations are underway in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Kenyan authorities are working with the U.S. military to protect against any potential terrorist attacks. Kenya is struggling with the terrorist group Al-Shabaab, based in neighboring Somalia. Kenyan authorities are also concerned about young people joining ISIS. The Kenyan president says both security and trade tops his agenda in meeting with President Obama.
There cannot be trade, there cannot be entrepreneurship if we don't have a secure environment. So it is important that we are able to ensure that we can guarantee security for all in order to be able to focus on the issues of trade.
President Obama is also expected to voice strong support for gay rights while in Africa. Some Kenyan politicians have warned the president that speeches on gay issues would not be welcomed. Homosexual acts in Kenya are punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Obama is the first sitting president to visit Kenya, his father's birthplace. He still has extended family living there, including his step-grandmother. His half-sister recently talked about their late father.
He'd be extremely proud and say, well done. But then he'd add, but obviously, you're an Obama. He was very proud.
And Kenya is not the only stop for President Obama this weekend. On Sunday, he will fly to Ethiopia, where he will become the first U.S. president to visit that country. He's traveling with 10 members of Congress, including one Republican. Brian?
Wyatt Goolsby at the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. Democratic lawmakers unveil what they call the Equality Act, applying to public accommodations, education, employment, and housing. Public Discourse reports it basically amends the 1964 Civil Rights Act to add sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes. Opponents of the bill claim if enacted into law, The Equality Act would further erode religious liberty. They say it would harm the public perception of those who believe in biblical sexual morality. Well, you're not going to see Coca-Cola, Ford Motor Company, and Xerox on Planned Parenthood's website anymore. Representatives of those companies say they have asked Planned Parenthood to remove their names as corporate donors. That follows a Daily Signal report revealing the names of 41 companies that Planned Parenthood listed as donors. That list was featured on the organization's website and has since been removed. Recent undercover videos sparked probes of Planned Parenthood's practice of harvesting and possibly selling parts from aborted babies. Well, their homes are sometimes called the threshold of heaven. The Little Sisters of the Poor accompany the elderly poor from this world to the next. Their homes are spotless, cheerful, loving, and very Catholic. The sisters who serve others with joy are once again at the mercy of the U.S. Supreme Court. They say they cannot in good conscience abide by a government mandate to provide contraceptives to their employees. Now facing huge fines after a court ruled against them, they seek relief from the U.S. Supreme Court. Kristina Arriaga, Executive Director of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, joins us. Of course, the Becket Fund represents the Little Sisters, EWTN, and others in this fight. In a nutshell, Kristina, where does this case stand right now?
Last week, a federal court issued a 100-page opinion essentially lecturing Little Sisters on Catholic theology and telling them that their objections to participate in the scheme makes them morally complicit is not valid. So a few days later, we at the Becket Fund have gone back to the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to protect the Little Sisters.
So how long do you think it will take the Supreme Court to weigh in on this relief, and what happens in the meantime? Are these fines adding up?
Well, there have been several people who have gone, ministries that have gone back to the Supreme Court asking for protection. So now the Supreme Court has to pick one case. If they pick the Little Sisters case, we'll find out before December, and they will make a decision by next summer. The question about the fines is a good one to ask the government. We don't know what the government is going to decide to do.
For-profit companies have been exempted from this. Why not the Little Sisters?
This is extremely infuriating. The government has exempted millions of American businessmen from having to comply with this mandate. Exxon, Pepsi-Cola Bottling Company, all exempted, and yet they refuse to issue an exemption to the small order of Catholic women who devote their lives to serving the poor.
Well, we also saw the Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Wood cases. They have been exempted. They're not a religious organization such as the Little Sisters. How are they drawing this line?
The government has a very stingy view of religious liberty. The Supreme Court clearly said that when an American person starts a business, they don't give up their religious liberty. And the government's position has been absurd. But here's the good news. Every time the government has gone to the Supreme Court, they have lost their case. The Supreme Court has said that they're wrong. So we're hoping that the same will happen with Little Sisters.
I wonder if this isn't really a battle of principles, like God's law versus man's law.
In a way it is. Our rights do not come from the government. Therefore, the government cannot take them away. What the government is doing to the Little Sisters is not only unacceptable, it's unconstitutional.
Well, we appreciate the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty and always appreciate the time we spend with you, Kristina.
Always glad to be here, Brian. Thank you.
Defense Secretary Ash Carter arrives in Erbil, Iraq for an unannounced visit today. Carter holds talks with Kurdish officials, including the Kurdish president. He's seeking insights into their military successes against the Islamic State. He claims U.S. ground and air forces could defeat ISIS on their own, but says the success wouldn't last. Carter visited Baghdad yesterday. He met with Iraq's prime minister as well as U.S. troops, assessing development in the fight against ISIS. This is Carter's first visit to Iraq since he took office in February. Tonight, we meet Earth's bigger, older cousin. That's what NASA calls a newly discovered planet. Scientists say Kepler 452b is the first planet similar to size to the Earth. It revolves around its star about the same distance Earth orbits the Sun. NASA says the discovery marks a milestone in the mission to find another planet like Earth, and they think there might be life there. Scientists say it provides an opportunity to better understand the Earth's evolving environment. So where is this planet? Not very close, 1,400 light years away. Coming up, the most basic of all human rights is at stake. Jason Calvi discusses harvesting baby parts with a pro-life member of Congress. And brace yourself for twists and turns with a championship pilot, all with no engine. Tomorrow, July 25th, is the feast of St. James the Apostle. Along with Peter and John, he witnessed the transfiguration of Jesus. James, often called James the Greater, was the first apostle to be martyred. St. James, pray for us. Thanks for joining us on this Friday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton defends Planned Parenthood. At a campaign stop in South Carolina, she calls Republican attacks part of a broader assault on a woman's right to abortion. One of those Republican lawmakers tells our Jason Calvi that this debate is about our most fundamental human right.
Would you be prepared for the government to shut down on this issue?
Listen, we don't want to see the government shut down. We want to keep the government open. But this, I mean, when you talk about the fundamentals of a society, it's whether you value life. And I think this is at the core foundation of who we are as a people. And I think a lot of us are willing to go to the mat on this issue. But again, where my colleagues are will be determined by the American people. And so I just hope that America will rise up and have their voices heard on this.
What about you? Have you heard from your constituents on this issue? Especially, I'm curious about those who support abortion.
So obviously, the pro-life side, or people who can see the issue both ways, they're horrified by these videos. What I find fascinating, though, when I talk about abortion, I'm a pro-life guy at conception, I get pushback from the left, and I'll always get pushback from the left. What's fascinating, though, is the left pro-abortion movement has been relatively silent in regard to the recent conversation about what's happening, because this stuff is indefensible. They don't have the ability to stand up and say, no, 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 this is not what we're doing. The language is so clear. In the video, they're really left defenseless, and so they can't really argue back in the push that we're making that taxpayer money shouldn't go to this organization. Surprisingly, they've been silent.
Thank you very much for your time today, Representative Duffy. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Well, it's been 3 months since a massive earthquake struck Nepal. Thousands of people died, and much of the country's infrastructure was ruined. A major aftershock rocked the Himalayan nation in May, killing hundreds more. Then came the monsoons. We're using Skype to connect with Kathmandu, where power cuts give us a very dim view of Radovan Jovanovic, the team leader for Mercy Corps emergency response in Nepal. What challenges have you been facing lately, especially with monsoon season there?
Good evening from Kathmandu. Well, as you know, earthquake hit Nepal like 3 months ago, and what we are facing now at the moment is the monsoon season, which started some 3 weeks ago. What Mercy Corps is doing, we are delivering kits and cash support to the families that have been affected in 4 of the districts north of Kathmandu. And we are daily facing problems with the landslides, which have actually been getting worse with the rains. We have reports from our field teams, mainly on daily basis, about some areas being cut off or some houses being destroyed, people having problem accessing the distribution sites. So Mercy Corps is dealing with whatever we can to actually get the kits out to the people that need it most.
So the quake destabilized the ground there, I would assume, so that's why the monsoons are worse, or rather the landslides connected to the monsoons would be worse this time?
Well, the thing is that monsoons have been causing landslides before as well. However, the earthquake have destabilized the soil quite significantly. We've been hearing more and more news about government trying to resettle people from the higher areas into lowlands, creating camps, providing some kind of temporary shelters for people.
So as you shift from relief to long-term recovery, I guess cash distribution is the most effective way to do that, and how are you doing it?
Well, the thing is that Mercy Corps has, after the assessments in the field, after distribution of the kits, basically there's a lot of things that people need in the areas, and you cannot unify, you cannot make a unified approach to everybody. So people have specific needs. You can provide certain things in the relief packages. However, you cannot foresee everything. So people actually, with the cash transfers, they actually have a choice of buying things that they actually need. Some basic things, yes, they get in the kits. You cannot provide them with support for every kind of support that they would need.
All right. So how can we help with this ongoing recovery effort?
Well, the thing is that if just continue supporting with donations, and organizations like Massacre will try to do everything possible to get them to the right people out there in the field. The needs are still big. We are providing kits and cash. However, there's a lot of areas out there that still need temporary shelters.
Thanks for bringing us up to date. Radovan Jovanovic with Mercy Corps. Thanks for joining us from Kathmandu.
Thank you and good night.
And a pilot shows off his flying aerobatics without an engine. Catherine Zeltner takes us on a ride with this world champion pilot.
It's not a ride for the faint of heart.
I love flying because of the freedom, because of the control, because of the opportunity that you have to be, within yourself.
Luca Bertosio has been flying since he was 16, but he's given up the roar of the engine for his latest passion.
You can fly a glider just by the sound it makes. If it makes like a whistle from the right, I know I'm sliding to the right. And you can't do this with so many airplanes.
And not many pilots can do what Bertosio can, helping him win a slew of competitions, including a world championship. His twists and turns are on display this week at the Experimental Aircraft Association's annual Convention and Air Show in Wisconsin.
And this is something a little bit different. It's quiet. You get to be in the air for a long time.
Even this 7-year-old aviation enthusiast was impressed with the glider.
My daddy said that when I become 15, he's gonna let me fly.
Without an engine, Bertosio has to be towed to about 5,000 feet.
When I release the cable, it's like to really be born again. Your mind change, your feelings, you start to breathe with your heart, not with your mouth,
Giving him a whole different perspective of the world. But it's not just the air guiding the Italian pilot.
It gives me a really good idea of where I am, what I have to fly, and what's next.
For Bertosio, that means pushing himself in his quest for his next world championship. Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, we explore some troubling cultural trends from marriage to volunteering. And the Yankees help New York City's Catholic charities welcome Pope Francis. It's Friday, the 24th of July, and this Sunday is the feast of Saints Anne and Joachim, parents of the Virgin Mary, grandparents of the child Jesus. They're patrons of married couples and grandparents. Thanks for joining us on this Friday evening. I'm Brian Patrick, and my grandkids call me Papa. Well, the U.S. marriage rate continues its decades-long decline. That according to a new report on culture and opportunity released this week. According to the Heritage Foundation, more than 1 in 4 U.S. children live in single-parent households. Other findings include abortion rate declines. Levels have gone down to pre-Roe v. Wade numbers. The percentage of American volunteers has also declined by 3.5% in 10 years. Jennifer Marshall is co-editor of the new report. She joins us from the Heritage Foundation. What figures surprised you most about this?
Well, Brian, we're looking at the 10-year trends in the Index of Culture and Opportunity, and so we look at 31 different indicators of opportunity in America. What's interesting about our discussion on opportunity is it usually begins with economic factors. But what we're trying to say with this index is it really matters about the cultural background. And does a child have the support of a family, of a married mother and father, of a neighborhood, of a cultural support system to be able to grab hold of those economic and educational opportunities that may come along later in life. So it's what's interesting and surprising in this report is to look at those 10-year trends stacked up against one another. And when you look at that marriage rate just continuing to decline over the last 10 years and the unwed childbearing rate continuing to climb, it's not helping us see more daylight towards opportunity. It's seeing us having more stumbling blocks in our road.
So these trends are a bit disturbing in the sense that you say it will be difficult to strengthen society. How so?
Well, we're looking at 31 different indicators. Only 9 of those are headed in the right direction. And that means that we're going to have concerted effort from policymakers to make sure that the infrastructure of the way our society works together is right, and then cultural efforts as well, because we know these can't be solved by government alone. These are cultural, social factors that are going to begin in individual neighborhoods with the support of churches to get these going in the right direction again.
But when the government and even the courts step in, for instance, the recent redefinition of marriage, the legal redefinition by the U.S. Supreme Court, how is that going to impact families for years to come?
That's right. Policymakers can really do the wrong thing, as they did in the U.S. Supreme Court decision mandating same-sex marriage across the country. And one of the things that's really helpful about this index of culture and opportunity is that we bring experts who are just at the top of their field to talk about the dynamics. So Mark Regnerus, a scholar who's written a lot on this from the University of Texas, talks about that redefinition of marriage and what impact it's going to have on changing what he calls the relationship ecosystem. We are going to see, because of this redefinition of marriage that separates it from a linkage towards childbearing, we're going to see less attention to the needs of children, and therefore we may see less interest in having children. And that's a significant change that will have ripple effects throughout our society.
Aren't we already seeing less interest in marriage and having children?
That is absolutely right. That's what our index tells us, yes.
So you mentioned that not all the trends are bad. What are some that are moving in the right direction?
Well, there are good news spots, and in fact, we publish the index because we think we can have more good news. We're publishing it in order to concentrate efforts and turn these indicators around.
Good.
Two that are going in the right direction: the number of children participating in private school choice programs has tripled over the last decade. Wow. Really encouraging, opening those kids' doors to a much brighter future. And then, of course, the abortion rate has reached its lowest level since Roe v. Wade. What an encouragement, but we have so much further to go.
And you encourage lawmakers to pursue policies that strengthen family, marriage, religious liberty. How can they do that?
First, stop doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So in the welfare state, we need to stop penalizing marriage, and then start doing the right thing and make sure that we maintain the full, robust religious liberty that will allow those providers of so many good social services at the ground level, the church and Christian ministries, to really flourish in the United States.
So we have something to work with. You put the research together, and I'm looking forward to reading more about that. Jennifer Marshall from the Heritage Foundation. It's always good to see you. Thank you.
Pleasure to see you.
Well, a few all-star athletes give Pope Francis a Grand Slam U.S. welcome.
I want to welcome Pope Francis to New York City.
I want to welcome Pope Francis to New York City.
For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. And I was a stranger, and you welcomed me.
The New York Yankees' welcome message was shared by Catholic Charities of New York today. In less than 2 months, Pope Francis arrives here in the U.S. He plans stops here in Washington, D.C., then New York City, where he'll address the United Nations, and the final stop, and the most important, Philadelphia, for the World Meeting of Families. Finally, as we say goodnight on this Friday, we remember Cardinal William Wakefield Baum, the third Archbishop of Washington. He died Thursday at age 89. Cardinal Baum served as Washington's Archbishop from 1973 to 1980, a priest for 64 years. He was the longest-serving cardinal in American history. Calling him a longtime friend, Washington Cardinal Donald Wuerl says he'll be remembered for his kindness and dedication. And Cardinal Wuerl adds, "May God now grant him a place in the house of our Father."